Hello everyone, this is Bill Griffin. Welcome to Different Take Podcast. If you like this content, please subscribe, like, share, comment. Really appreciate you watching. I've done a few episodes regarding the Gwinnett County public school system, larger systems in the country. Might be the biggest system in Georgia. I'm not sure if Fulton County's bigger. 180,000 students. And they've had problems with retaining teachers. There seems to be a pattern because in the bigger cities, that's a common refrain. Because if you can't attract and retain good teachers, you're not going to educate students in the basic subjects. So this is a teacher at a school board meeting on this topic. And this was recorded at a meeting in February of 23.
Different elementary and middle schools over the past 2 years, both Title I and non-Title I schools. Now, some people think that teaching at a Title I school is the same as at a non-Title I school, but it isn't. And everyone needs to recognize and acknowledge that fact before attempting to tackle teacher retention. The teachers at all our schools do the best they can with the students who walk into their classrooms. But if you're teaching at Gwinnett School of Math, Science, and Technology, then the students who walk in are pretty good, both in their academics and their behavior.
I think what this gentleman is alluding to is the school board and the superintendent that they've hired. His name is Calvin Watts. But three of the school board members and the other two, well, they're in the minority, but the three school board members, their names are Karen Watkins, Adrian Simmons, and Therese Johnson, who's the chair, who's a Marxist. But she and the other two members that are in the majority are hell-bent on woke policies. And I think this is what this gentleman's alluding to, that you've prioritized so many other things above the basic things of teaching reading, writing, math, history, science. Want to change history is taught. There are a lot of myths in history books, but even without the woke part, when you throw the woke in, you get a really distorted view, in my opinion, because you really want to teach things not in an uncritical fashion, but so that people can interpret events in their own way. But setting that aside, I think the woke priorities have overwhelmed, and that's caused problems with teacher retention. This is another gentleman talking about teacher retention. He's also a teacher. Same board meeting in February of 23.
My name is Frank Buckley. I'm a qualified, certified K-8 math teacher with 20 plus years of experience. I have coached football, basketball, baseball, track, tennis, volleyball, softball, and taught drama. I stand before you tonight in extreme distress, and I'm sending out an SOS, imploring this board to help save our students. I'm certain that we all can agree that student success begins with having highly qualified teachers in the classroom and administrative team that support and care about them. Gwinnett County school teacher transfer policy is prohibiting great teachers from continuing to work in the district. When satisfying the 3-year requirements present challenge, being devalued, discriminated against, working in an unhealthy and unsafe environment, administration that violates the code of ethics and do not follow district policies on promotion and retention, or use marijuana and vaping on school grounds. These are the type of things that are going on in the school in which I work. And that's why then they tell you you can't transfer because you haven't been there 3 years.
So I want to know, at these board meetings, the board, they really don't want to hear any sort of criticism of the school system, which is kind of strange because why are you defensive? Why don't you want to deal with the facts as they are? But that's not the case when you're trying to implement this woke ideology. The board lacks business experience. The three members of the majority have, it's obvious they have very little or any business experience. When board members speak, they don't really address the concerns of the parents or the teachers or any of the speakers. They don't talk about what they're actually saying. They don't respond, which tells me they're not listening. But in addition to that, they like to tell personal stories, and they talk about themselves, how much they really care. Well, it's not really necessary to tell people that you care or that you're listening unless you really don't want to hear from them. Because if it's true, it'll be obvious. When you constantly have to tell people that you want to hear what they have to say, you do not want to hear them. These board members make a great effort to be perceived as important. They spend an inordinate amount of time thanking each other for just doing what they're paid to do. Spend a lot of time patting themselves on the back. This particular meeting, I believe the chair, Therese Johnson, launched into a long-winded poem she had written. You talk about unprofessional. So these board members, they're selling. They're trying to sell you on the woke ideology, which means equity, which means proportionality, which means it's intentionally trying to lower the standards, lower the education standards, not raise them. So they're headed in the direction of the Baltimore City Public Schools. I did an episode on this recently. Out of the entire system, as 7% grades 3 through 8 that were math proficient. This is from the Maryland State Education Department of Education. And I'm going to do another episode on that because I think it's pretty appalling and pretty interesting that many people don't find it appalling. This is a Therese Johnson in the same, or actually this is the work session meeting, February 23rd. You can find this on the GC, Gwinnett County Public School website, gcps.com.
We can just ensure equity in the process of that, and really in everything we do, right? We should always engage equity, even in the teachers testing the pilots. And how is that done? Self-selection? Is it appointment? What's that process look like? And also, as we look at the data and get feedback from community members and parents around curriculum, what is that 90%? Is it, a representative of the district and the parents we serve? That is a critical piece of information to ensure that we're doing that. And thank you so much for all you do. And I continue to encourage that we, in everything we do look at equity in the process. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Equity in all we do. So that takes priority over learning math. And Gwinnett County school system is headed down the same road that the Baltimore City Public Schools have already gotten to. And they will kill the messenger. I don't know why they're so defensive about results, but that's where this is headed. Because a lot of parents have been complaining about the restorative practices because the children, well, not only parents, teachers, children, the students, but their children are at risk of getting beat up just by going to school. So this is intentional. It's intentional in order to get proportionality in the better performing schools have to come down to the lower performing schools. The better performing students have to come down to the lower performing students level. Now you may say, well, I don't think people were actually doing this on purpose. Yeah, they are, because you are prioritizing those things over the education of the students. It's obvious. Achieving proportionality, it's inherent that you have to discriminate. You have to discriminate. And I'm not referring to not just only how somebody looks, but also, or what their race is, but also whether or not they're capable or not. You're depriving people in the poor schools with the poor teachers. You're providing the students that have the same natural ability as the better school environments, the schools that are having the best practices. You're depriving the ones, as a professor from University of Georgia, Peter Smagorinsky, told me in an interview, University of Georgia, professor, teacher of teachers. He said if a school is in in a bad neighborhood and it's predominantly low income families, then those students can't have what a private school has. So that's what the board is hell-bent on, equity over any and everything else. This is another example. This is the superintendent of the school system in Gwinnett County. His name is Calvin Watts. And this is also a work session meeting in February.
What does that mean? That means an adult, a caring adult, or a colleague, a student has engaged in a relationship with another human being, and they get along. They understand that they are there for each other. We have newly formed, up to 26, I believe, is the number of after-school programs. Why do we have those? Because we listened to our families who said, we're having a hard time picking up our students, our young people, after school hours, and then while I'm working, to find another location to drop them off for after-school programs and then come back and pick them up.
You don't hear him say, we're having after-school sessions to tutor math. We're having after-school because some parents, and you have to believe this is a very minority of parents that can't get their children transportation back from school with school buses. There's family members that can pick them up and all sorts of things. Friends, there's all kinds of ways to get your children back and forth from school, but people often complain schools are just babysitting, and he's saying that out loud. That's what we're doing. We're watching your children so you don't have to make it more convenient for you, not to give them extra academic attention if they're lagging behind and so forth. At the end of the day, parents decide how and where their children are educated. Well, in Georgia, there is a bill going through the legislature in $6,000 per student voucher that you can take. That won't cover, it's not dollar for dollar, that won't cover your child's education, the entirety of it. But it's a step in direction to give the public schools some competition. Because for better or worse, if it's a government school, the student will learn what the government wants to teach the student, period, for better or worse. I think Gwinnett County Public Schools, as I said, they're headed down the same road as Baltimore City Public Schools. They're way ahead on the woke thing, and they're so effective that the students are not math proficient, and they don't seem to have a problem with it, honestly. And I'm going to go over that in an upcoming episode. Well, I wish the parents in Georgia luck. Hopefully the school choice legislation will pass, and I will give you a path to get your child out of inferior school system. So that's my episode for today. I appreciate you watching. If you like this content, please subscribe, like, share, comment. Thank you.